Alrighty guys, so what is going on? Ainscub is here and welcome to another reaction video. So today I'm reacting to the infographic show. I don't know if you guys know who the infographic show is, but it's like one of the top channels I watch right now. They're possibly like the only people I watch right now on top of Jacksepticeye and Blasphemous HD. I don't watch very much YouTube anymore. I just do a lot of YouTube. So I'm reacting to right now. This is called What Happens If the U.S. Pulls Out of NATO. I'm not going to move the screen because I can read it right here. I know what it says. So I'm going to go ahead and react to this. Zane's coming and we're going to react to some more Lil Dicky soon. Somebody said we should do the Sway freestyle and a different freestyle. I can't remember right now. So let's get into this video and let me see if I can put some points into here. Because I watch these guys a lot. I feel like I learned a lot from this guy. I really do like this guy.
This episode is brought to you by Dashlane. Try Dashlane Premium free.
If you guys don't know, the guy talking right now actually knows a lot. He knows a lot about survival. He's been in the military. He does challenges like only eating what he can catch for 3 days and shit like that. Like the infographics is a really cool channel if you guys want to check him out. It's really cool.
For 30 days at dashlane.com/infographics.
I don't care about that though.
Never forget another password and keep
I don't care about the heads.
Secure. Here at the Infographic Show, we come up with all kinds of interesting topics and ideas to research for your entertainment. But sometimes, we like answering a question directly from you, the fans. Today, we're going to look at a huge what-if scenario submitted by fan Joji, who asked us what would happen if the U.S. were to pull out of NATO. Concern for an American withdrawal from NATO is not without precedent. Famously now, President Trump often bemoaned the alliance during the 2016 election, saying that the U.S. should pull out of it and that it no longer served American interests to remain in NATO.
Wow.
While that statement was not just completely factually incorrect, it ultimately proved to be nothing more than political grandstanding for votes, and the U.S. today firmly remains in
NATO.
American sentiments on
I was going to say
that European member states don't hold their fair share with the alliance are not without merit. Per a 2014 agreement, each nation is meant to fund its military at 2% of GDP, with 20% of that spent on equipment. After World War II, the U.S. was happy to bear the majority cost of defending Europe, as European nations rebuilt themselves after World War II. However, over the next almost 7 decades, nations would consistently fail to meet funding goals. And when President Trump took office in 2016, only Britain and the U.S. were meeting that 2% goal. Today, Greece, Britain, Estonia, and Poland are the only nations to meet or...
Those are 5, and you guys saw how many fucking nations were out there. Holy shit.
...or exceed 2% spending. There were 15 total nations of the 29 member states are on track to meet that goal sometime in the 2020s.
Okay.
Simply put, many Americans are tired of bearing the cost of defending Europe, while Europeans seem generally disinterested in doing so. In fact, the atrophying of Europe's defense industry is largely thanks to the security umbrella that the U.S. has provided for almost 7 decades. And with thousands of American servicemen stationed across Europe, European nations have traditionally seen little need to be responsible for their own defense past a token force. So what if America said, enough is enough, and decided to withdraw from NATO? What would happen in the alliance, and how could it fare in a war against, say, China or Russia? First, if the U.S. packed up all its toys and went home, a whopping 75% of military hardware on the continent would suddenly disappear, along with about 50,000 troops. The United States operates its military on a total...
Wow.
One of the most challenging...
I don't give a fuck about these ads.
Total war footing, meaning that it dedicates resources to ensure supremacy in all areas of warfare: land, sea, space, and cyberspace. Few other nations, however, match this capability, and most NATO forces aside from France, Italy, Spain, Turkey, and the UK don't have a diverse enough military to carry out a true combined arms war against a modern adversary such as Russia. The most immediate problem NATO would face would be a severe lack of space-based communications and intelligence assets, as the majority of NATO's space resources are American, and American units process and disseminate this information to NATO partners. The second major obstacle for NATO would be a lack of transportation assets. In our previous video, The United States versus the World, we showed you that in total global war against the U.S., the American military would be able to fight the world's militaries to a draw.
Yeah, I've seen that. They can fight to the point where, like, the last bullet is shot, and it's a draw. Oh, I got food here. I forgot I had food.
And prevent any invasion of the American homeland. This is due to 2 factors: the United States Navy and its transportation capabilities. Simply put, the world lacks enough military
The
transportation.
Navy is fucking huge. I watched a video on the infographics on the Navy, man. They got so many huge. They got so many ships, man, and so many huge ships.
Capability, and the naval assets to defend that cargo to ever threaten the United States. Guns aren't worth a damn if you can't bring them to the battlefield or if they get sunk en route. Take China, for example, a modern military power with a huge thorn in its side, Taiwan. The tiny island defiantly refuses reunification with the mainland. And yet, though the Chinese military greatly dwarfs the small Taiwanese forces, China is completely incapable of crossing the 110 miles to get to the island. It lacks the air and naval transportation capabilities to pull this very tiny trip off. And any attempt to invade Taiwan by China's juggernaut military would end in a total bloodbath for the People's Liberation Army. NATO, however, is in an even worse position for transporting troops and equipment to a modern battlefield. During the Falklands War between Great Britain and Argentina, had Argentina used its navy more efficiently, it would have absolutely trounced British forces. Due to the low numbers Britain could successfully ferry across the Atlantic at the time, even with the objective being the securing of a tiny strip of islands, Britain could barely manage to procure enough transportation capability to conduct a maritime assault, and had to press civilian ships into service. Even then, it was covert American assistance that saw Britain's tank forces ships refuel the Falklands, and American aircraft that flew British personnel to Ascension Island, a staging ground for the invasion. It was also American satellite intelligence that averted a potential total defeat when the CIA informed the British.
Goddamn. Oh no, I'm not supposed to pause that. I'm supposed to pause the video.
That their invasion force would be going up against 2 to 3 times the number of defenders they originally believed they would be facing. In modern times, things haven't gotten much better, and the British Navy has actually shrunk in size. Several ships have even had to be cannibalized of crew so that Britain's new aircraft carriers could be activated. The French and Italians are in better position to move NATO troops around, but even their current fleets don't allow those nations to do much more than small expeditionary sorties, such as France's current ongoing counterterrorism operations in Africa. In essence, NATO would be all but paralyzed as it tried to move troops and equipment to war fronts due to a severe shortage of transportation assets. The best that NATO could manage would be a European defense, as the alliance has absolutely no capability to respond to threats outside of the European.
AKA, wait for all enemies to come to you. That's basically just what you gotta do. You gotta camp. Because that's all you can do. You gotta camp and wait for everybody to hide behind them corners, bro.
A war with China would thus be impossible, although to be fair, China itself also cannot wage war outside of its own borders. The third problem that NATO would face would be the leadership vacuum caused by the US's exit from the alliance, without any other nation being truly militarily superior, though France is certainly neck and shoulders above the others. It would be difficult to determine just who would run the alliance during wartime. A crisis against Russia would require a unified command structure, and right now, no nation seems capable of stepping in and filling that role. Thanks to the disastrous decision to leave the EU, Britain would likely be far too resented by the other Euro powers to allow it to leave. And highly divisive internal politics in France and Germany would likely preclude them from taking leadership. Turkey is seen today by many as a rather reluctant partner in NATO, and were war to break out between the divided NATO and Russia, there's no telling if Turkey would honor its commitment to the alliance. But let's say that NATO did manage to pull itself together enough to resist a Russian invasion, if for some reason Russia did want to invade. Well, right now, NATO's easternmost neighbors, such as Estonia and Latvia, face about 46 battalions of Russian tanks, infantry, and other forces. By comparison, NATO only has 11 battalions currently defending that area, and most of those forces are light infantry forces with little heavy equipment. NATO could effectively surge an additional 8 battalions in an emergency, but 7 of those battalions right now would be American. Without the US, NATO can only surge a single battalion into an eastern emergency, bringing NATO troop numbers to 12 battalions versus Russia's 46. Not only would NATO forces be initially outnumbered, but Russia could call up to 20 million reservists relatively quickly, while NATO has varying levels of readiness on a nation-by-nation basis. In the air, NATO and Russia have a relative parity, with both nations roughly having the same number of fighter aircraft. However, Russia has an advantage in attack aircraft, numbering 1,459 versus NATO's approximately 1,300. Russia without a doubt fields the best air defense system in the world in the S-300, 400, and the new 500 model. And without American stealth assets or long-range cruise missiles to destroy those systems...
Hey, I just created a professional Wix site for my business. Let's check it out. Go to Wix.com. There.
I'm good.
Or the command and
Thanks,
control
buddy.
nodes that support them, NATO air forces would be savaged as long as Russia advanced slowly across Europe, allowing time for its air defenses to reposition and cover troop movements. Targeting would also be a major problem for NATO forces, who would no longer have access to American recon assets or satellites to relay information on enemy troop movements and locations. With a massive advantage in electronic warfare, Russian forces could potentially make coordination and communication between NATO forces very difficult. On the ground, Russian tank forces would dwarf NATO forces, with roughly 20,000 tanks at its disposal versus NATO's 3,600. Granted, many of Russia's stated tank numbers are actually Cold War-era relics, which would require weeks of maintenance to make combat worthy, but even without these tanks, Russia still fields a very sizable force of modern and postmodern, but still capable tanks. A more accurate Russian number would be 2,600 of immediately available tanks, though no doubt many of those in reserve would be reactivated in the build-up to war. With almost 4,000 rocket artillery, though, Russia would decimate NATO forces, who can barely field 400 units of their own. Traditionally, NATO relied on more accurate air power rather than ground artillery, but most of that air power was American in nature and is no longer now available. While Russia also has an advantage in traditional artillery, rocket artillery is especially devastating, as it allows the launching of massive amounts of firepower in a very short time, not giving the defenders a chance to relocate or dig into defensive positions. Russia's advantage in this arena would leave NATO forces struggling to pull themselves together in an environment that would look like the cratered surface of the moon. Although NATO could field about 2 million personnel versus Russia's 1 million, these personnel all had varying degrees of readiness, as does their equipment. Famously, Germany's Air Force was discovered to be completely incapable of carrying out wartime operations this past summer, due to a shortage of personnel and equipment, both. Its Navy also faces similar problems, leaving in question the utility of a keystone member of a European-only alliance. Turkey also makes up the bulk of European NATO forces, and given its strained relation with other NATO members and the lack of strong leadership should the US step out of the alliance, it's not known if Turkey would support NATO in a war against Russia. NATO could not hope to operate in the short term without the US's continued support, though there is hope that if the US left and there was no immediate emergency, the alliance could manage to pull itself together in time and become a fighting force capable of at least defending Europe. With the balance of global power shifting across the Atlantic to the Pacific in a new tug-of-war between the US and China, though, NATO will have to greatly expand its expeditionary capabilities if it doesn't want to live in a world dominated by China's influence and under global rules imposed by the Chinese Communist Party. If NATO wanted to remain viable in a war without the US, then immediate steps must be taken to address critical shortfalls in key areas. A dramatic expansion of expeditionary capabilities would be critical not just for fighting conflicts far from home, but to rapidly move forces to potential flashpoints with Russia. This means a larger naval transport fleet, and the surface and undersea assets to protect those ships, as well as a huge expansion of current air transportation fleets. Next, the alliance would have to address a critical lack of space assets, as without US support, the meager European space infrastructure that does exist would be very quickly dismantled and more. While the US has a fleet of ready to...
So get this. Every 1.23 seconds, a new user goes to Wix.com and starts creating a professional website.
Cool.
Ready to deploy space assets in case of wartime attrition of current assets, as well as the space government and civilian infrastructure to launch those assets, Europe largely lacks the physical hardware to replace any current losses in space, though it at least has adequate delivery solutions thanks to the robust European Space Agency. Transportation, intelligence, and leadership are NATO's greatest weaknesses without the US, quickly followed by a severe lack of heavy combat equipment needed to stop a modern combat force.
Of course.
Yet these are problems that can be overcome with the refocusing of European military priorities, and in the long run, NATO could survive without the United States. For the US's part, any talk of leaving the alliance would be tantamount to shooting itself in the foot, even if anger at shouldering the bulk of the cost of European defense is itself not without merit. European forces have proven steadfast allies for the United States in a variety of conflicts, and the 7 decades of peace in Europe are a testament to the ultimate victory of NATO, which has so far succeeded with all members united in preventing a future war. Traditional warfare isn't the only threat that might follow the U.S. pulling out of NATO. Cyber wars between huge nations don't just target each other's military forces.
Alright, so he's gonna stop talking about NATO and everything, and he's gonna start actually talking about the sponsor of the video, Dashlane. So I'm just gonna end the video here, but I think it's pretty interesting. I mean, I'm very surprised. I didn't know just how much America played a role in NATO. I didn't know that we have basically everything. Like all of our satellites all the NATO satellites are American, and aircraft and everything like that. I didn't know most of it was all American. But I think I heard that Russia has 1 million immediate deployable troops, and NATO has 2 million. So, I mean, 2 million is a lot of troops. That's double the amount of troops. Having double the amount of troops than the opposing side is always a great plus. It's always a good plus to have more, to outnumber somebody, and they doubled it. So, I mean, I have no idea if they would win or not, but I have no idea when it comes to NATO and everything like that. I don't exactly have an opinion because I just learned about Brexit and the EU and everything like that. I'm just getting into politics and learning how politics work and how stuff like this happens. So I don't really have an opinion on NATO or if we should pull out of NATO. But I heard that Turkey, that was surprising. Well, actually, that wasn't surprising to me. I knew that we were defending most countries and they weren't pulling their own weight. I actually knew that, but I was surprised to see that out of like all 29 countries that are in NATO, that only 5 meet a 2% of their total, what is it, annual earnings, yearly earnings, I can't remember, but 2% of their annual earnings, their whole country's annual earnings going into military and everything. I can't believe that less than 2%. I mean, only 5 people were in there, so I'm going to end this video here. I think it should be here in about 10 minutes or so. So, like, if you enjoyed, subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next video. If you guys have an infographic show thing that you guys want me to watch, be sure to leave it as a suggestion down in the comments. They're all welcome. Then I will watch all videos that you guys suggest to me that I can get to. So, like, if you enjoyed, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.